I mean, again, indie films. I love them. I love them. You know what, though? The consistent thing about indies is they're overscheduled. 100%. Yeah. 100%. And if I would tell them, I mean, they're like, oh my gosh, the way they scheduled is by the skin of their teeth, which doesn't allow for anything to go wrong. And that's the problem. And we live on the East Coast. I mean, West Coast might be a little different because, you know, California has such consistent weather. East Coast, you never know what you're going to get. Yeah. And so this is an indie film that was being shot in Bayonne, New Jersey. And had a nice little cast, and it was a quiet film. I mean, there was a scene we were supposed to shoot. It's about like a dad whose wife dies, and then he has to deal with his teenage son that's getting into counterculture, and he's really rebellious and doesn't respect his father. And it's about them trying to connect, to be like, look, it's just us now as family, and we have to get through this and be adults and have a relationship together. And we're shooting in a house. It was multiple days. We're shooting upstairs in a bedroom, and we had 3 tiers of scaff. And on that scaff, we had built 2 6Ks that were shooting through 129 diffusion on all the windows. And it was a nice, beautiful 60s day in the fall in New Jersey. And then I look at the weather for the next day, and it's a hurricane is coming. And, like, a hurricane is coming to New Jersey, landfall, 50 to 70 mile an hour winds. And the producers are like, well, we're starting in the bedroom, so we just think we would leave the scaffolding and the 6Ks up and just start in the morning. 3 tiers. 3 tiers. Oh, God. And my best boy, the key grip, we all were like, well, hey, look, man, we think that we should work in a way where scaffolding isn't involved tomorrow. Is there a way we can do a schedule shift? We have lots of interior scenes. Can we do something on the ground that's not second floor related? Da, 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 da. They wouldn't hear it. They're like, no, sorry. No, schedule's this way. I'm like, yeah, but hurricane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we don't think it's going to actually be a real hurricane. We think that that's we think that that's just, you know, hyperbole.
Producer's a meteorologist now.
Yeah, well,
Fake
as you guys
news.
know, I mean, again, it's their fault because if you had a little buffer in your schedule to allow for these things, but they didn't. And so they're like, we're just going to take that risk. And obviously we're talking about risk assessment. Producers do this all the time, especially with like locations and cover sets. And they have to make these choices all the time. Rarely do I see it work out, but you know, that's a personal choice. Risk assessment is a personal choice. Producers, good luck. You got it too. In this case, they failed because the next day we show up and the winds were already at 25 when we showed up. And the scaffolding, if you're on it, you're swaying at this level. This is the level of sway.
Wow.
And
That's a safety concern too.
extreme. And the grips were working on it. They were throwing lines out. I've never seen scaffolding with more like tie-off points. Probably like 15 to 20.
Jeez.
Oh no, it was a lot. And like, here we are. So we're in a neighborhood with chain link fence all around the backyards. And without permission, they're not talking the locations. They're jumping over chain link fences like 3 deep to get the right angle they need on the tie down. So every neighbor of our shoot location, now we're tying off to their fences without asking. I thought that was a little detail that was kind of fun, where it's like, oh yeah, whatever guys, we need this.
Yeah.
And just to lay of the land, to run these 6Ks, I'm doing a tie-in in the basement. So a tie-in is where you go upstream of a distribution box, and then you redistribute power on your own needs for the film set. But it requires you opening the box, having exposed wiring, leads, trico clamps, and then wires that go to the floor to a box that then you redistribute.
Also, doing that all while power is live.
That's right. There's no way to turn it off. So, I mean, we could talk about tie-ins, but...
No, but just knowing that, like, you're working in a box.
You're connecting to 100 to 200 to 300 amps while it's still hot. And so one of the techniques is you do it just with your right arm and your left arm's behind your back. The reason is if you have both arms touching the lead at the same time, the electricity is going to want to go around through one arm to the other to then down. And if you do it on the right side only, because your heart's on the left, the electricity is going to come down your right side, down out your right leg, and not pass through your heart to give you a heart attack.
Yeah, this
What?
is real.
What is this? Like,
Psycho
what?
that did
Yeah.
this, like,
Who's thinking about this
Also,
stuff?
there's
like when you're on
also you
set?
have two assistants. Like there's two techniques for an assistant with you. It's one is a rope to pull you off if you get locked, because if you do arc, the problem is while you're using the metal on the hot leads of 100 amps, you could make that touch another piece that would arc, and then you're going to get electrified, and your muscles are going to contract, and you're going to be stuck on the box.
Yeah.
And so your assistant either does one of two things. They either have a rope around you to pull you off, or the old school way, which Harry Bach says is a 2x4 to hit you off. But I always like the rope idea because it's less impact.
Yeah.
That
2x4 always felt like
it felt
the worst
yeah.
idea ever.
No, and your assistants are usually like a little too eager about it, like waving it, like, oh yeah, all right, go, Sucky, let's go. And I'm like, well, yeah, put a rope around me, please.
is the rope around your waist?
It's around your waist.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they just yank you backwards.
they just yank you off.
So with these few simple tricks, anyone can do it at home, right?
Well,
Risk assessment, guys.
Yeah,
risk
why?
risk
Do it on
assessment,
your-
but plus also, this
No
is a
one do
different
this
time.
at home,
this
please.
is a different time. I mean, like so much has changed in the LED revolution
Yeah, you
that
have
I haven't
to-
done a tie-in in over 10 years. So I mean, these things have changed. Plus, on higher budgets, Union, they don't do this. They have big generators that come in. So this is really specifically the tie-in problem was a time period with a budget level, right? Like it's an
Yeah.
indie level budget of a certain time, and then you're having to deal with this. And I learned as an apprentice where I started with the 2x4 and ended up with the metal clamps in my hand. But you could be creative with it. Just sidebar, Apocalypse Day is great, but sidebar, I've done some pretty creative things with tie-ins as well. Like there was a time we were at Fort Totten and we were shooting a music video that had a tunnel with individual practicals over it every 20 feet. So it's a really moody concrete tunnel with practicals, and the director was really into David Lynch and was like, oh, I'd love it if they could flicker, but they're on house power. So what I did is I popped the breaker off the bus bar, spliced the main wire, and then wired in a 2K magic gadget into the main
box.
line, and then threw the box back on and turned it on. And so now I was able to run like a house line that's flickering all at once.
Whoa.
I mean, this guy. Mad scientist. This is exactly what.
Well, but then from there, the next step was we wanted a house where it was a whole house, where it was a Steadicam shot that as a character was going through and singing, each room they would walk in was dark, and then the practicals would light up in proximity to that person. So you needed to control it DMX, right? Slide bars. As they got near a lamp, that lamp would come on. Like they were some kind of inductive power source for any lamp that they were near. And so what I did was I bought myself a bus bar, which is the internal connectivity device in a breaker box, and then connected all the breakers from the house onto a bus bar hanging on a C-stand that then I ran through a DMX that then put the leads from the DMX into the bus bar. So I was able to run a house DMX style with sliders.
Wow.
Damn.
How do you come up with this stuff? Like,
I don't know.
This shitty rig sidebar moment is brought to you by Shoveltown Brewery, by the way.
Again, you're dealing with hot leads, so it's all dangerous. And thankfully, I haven't had to do that in a while. And today, with technology, with Nix bulbs, you don't need to do that. Like
Bulbs, LEDs.
LEDs, I mean, we're talking about I feel like a dinosaur a little bit.
It was like a very specific time when you're using these big lights. You don't have access to like giant generators.
But it's probably also the thing that made for the reasoning behind the design for these things to be
right.
the way that they are. Like, it's because people were doing these dangerous things. Like, why don't we just make it so it's like safer, it's smarter?
That's true,
This
John.
is what
You're
we
absolutely
need, right?
No, the production, I guess the film, invention community has met the needs of the indie a little bit.
And the technology available
the
to us
technology
are actually
available,
caught
yeah.
up that we can
Yeah.
do these kind of things too.
Yeah, so I don't recommend any of these practices. I could today, if like all these stories I'm telling, I could think of several much cheaper and safer ways to handle these things. So
100%.
I'd like to get back to the apocalypse.
Oh, yeah,
thing.
sorry,
Tell
apocalypse.
us more
Oh,
about the hurricane
Tying to
came.
people's fences.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
had a tying in the basement. There was
Hurricane.
25 mile an hour winds coming in.
yeah. 3 tiers of scaff, 2 6Ks. Okay, so a gaffer typically isn't the person that does every action on the build, right? A gaffer's main job is to be next to the DP, to hear their needs, and then communicate to your team what needs to happen. So there we were up in the bedroom. I have no electricians on set with me. They're all outside with the 6Ks. And we're doing an intimate scene, characters are talking about their sadness and their feelings. And then the lights start shaking or vibrating or flickering, and the DP's like, the lights are flickering. And these old HMIs, that's a problem that you used to have to deal with too. Like flicker freeze, does it match with your frame rate and like all this stuff? Or sometimes the ballast will just get quirky and start flickering. And so I'm like, hey guys, the lights are flickering. Hey guys, the lights are flickering. And I get the worst walkie transmission I ever, it was like, it wasn't complete. It was like there were breaks in it. It was like, when it comes on, they're like, Smokey, oh my God, there's a, and then I can't do it. And like, I'm like, what is going on? So my face immediately shows a little bit of terror, and I walk out. We had 129 on the window, so you can't see out. You can't see what's happening out there. And I go outside, and the winds have picked up, and now they're in 40s. And no one has called it yet, but the scaffolding is now this. And my best boy, it looks like the Gordon Fisherman. It's raining and pouring, and he's wearing like a yellow slicker, and he's on top just holding on for dear life with the 6Ks. And I'm like, get down, get down. And so now everybody's pouring out of the set. DP's wearing like a scarf and a beret, and he runs up to like grab something. I'm like, don't grab anything. I got to hit the breakers. Like, don't touch the scaffolding because like there's water all over the ground. And I killed the 6Ks. We were able to turn them off, get the best boy down. But at this point, we were having trouble with the basement. Now, the basement had several things. The basement had wardrobe. It had craft service, and it had our tie-in, and the central drainage system of the basement was failing, and water was gaining at 8 inches every 10 minutes, and I had to tie out because we were still in live with 200 amps of power, and those cables are underwater. And so we built a Apple Box stone pond system to get over to the breaker. And that was really funny too, because so while I'm getting over there, the water's rising so fast, the best boy had to follow me with quarters and other fulls to keep adding to the wood to keep it out of the water as it's rising. So you would lift one foot while you're like unscrewing a trico, and then you would lift your other foot. You'd insert more wood while you're unscrewing the other. We were able to get that out. I'll never forget, like, we suffered there electrically, sure, but poor wardrobe. Their stuff was not even on racks. Some of it was in bags on the floor. And this water coming up wasn't just regular water, it was sewage water. So I remember the wardrobe department pulling out bags of clothes extras are supposed to wear covered in sewage water with like brown stains up to half of the bags. Oh, God. And so,
What happened? What was the next step? Yeah,
Okay, so
what happened?
The next step was... they decided to change scenes. The 6Ks are down, so they decided to change scenes. The scene that they chose to change to was an outdoor scene with the dad and the son doing a pet burial. They lost their family dog. And it's supposed to be a sensitive scene where the kid delivers a eulogy over the pet's grave. And at this point, the rain had stopped, but the wind was even accelerating even more. So, and we're out of power. DP wants an active source. I suggest passive, which means like you can harness light many ways. You can use electricity to gain one, but passive means like you're using more of a grip system where you're bouncing what the existing light is, which at this point seemed better to me. Except I guess in this case you could also say on counter that it could be a flag or a sail because bounces do require some.
Yeah, but you just had untied from my
I had just untied. The last thing I wanted to do was like plug into the house again. And so that's when the DP sent me on a mission. He's like, Smokey, I need you to go to other houses and see if they have any external power or a box outside you could tie into. He's asking me to tie into another house. And at my age now, I have a very clear answer to this. It's different than my age then. And then I was like still very much new. This is this is right after the leaded and unleaded feature. So I was like, sure, boss. And so he's got a PA going to Home Depot to buy a very new Putt 3000. And I start walking around Bayonne looking at the neighbors' houses to see whose boxes I could open up and grab power from.
Oh my God.
And I come back and my initial assessment is I didn't see anything. And now I'm watching the set. I'm at set. I get a little bit of a view of what's going on. And so here we are, the kid's trying to deliver his eulogy, and the winds are so much, their hair is all over their face. It's like supposed to be a really quiet, sensitive scene of like, you know, like they're both gonna come together. This is a reconciliation moment. And the wind is so much that like the sound guy's like, I need another. And like, you couldn't even see their face because like the kid had long hair, it was all over his face. And so I turned to the DP and I was like, hey man, I know that we really have to, like our schedule's really tight, but like this doesn't feel like the right vibe for how I read this. And he's like, Smokey, did you find any power? I'm like, okay, all right, I'll keep looking. He's like, keep looking. So at this point, I'm going farther in the perimeter, and I get to like a main road. It's like a Jersey road, 2 lanes one way, 2 lanes the other way, with like a median with like left turn openings, and there's cars parked along the side, and it had electrical lines above and transformer boxes. This is like a main thoroughfare. Yeah. And there was like a Ford pickup truck down the way. And as I show up, a power line pole goes down at an angle, snapping the cords, the cables, and they start whipping around like hot snakes. They're still hot, these like power lines. And one of them hits the top of the truck, and the truck explodes. It explodes with like a 15-foot mushroom cloud, and the transformer I was standing behind me explodes, blasts me forward onto the ground.
God. Holy shit.
They still haven't called it. They haven't called it. No, they haven't called it. And so I go back, and now I go back, and now the fire trucks are showing up and doing sirens. And
the eulogy.
And they're still doing the eulogy, and the sound's like, I've had it.
Yeah, this is like Alan's worst nightmare right now. Alan's probably like over here like, oh my God, I can't believe
Seriously,
this shit.
I saw the sound guy throw his headphones on the ground. And they're like, Smokey, did you find power?
A little too much of it seems.
What was like the drive? Why did they have to keep shooting?
They had no option. Like their schedule was so tight. Like they were, you know.
They probably couldn't afford to take a down day.
They couldn't afford to take a down day. So, you know, again, this is so we talk about risk management. Imagine imagine the producer here, right? In risk management, the producer's like, I'm all in. Just kept putting those chips right into the center. I'm all in. Hey, what's wrong? I'm all in. Like no matter what, you came to him. Anywho, so they're like, okay, I guess we can't do this scene. Let's go inside. When's that putt-putt coming? So let's go inside and do the dining room scene. I'm like, are you kidding me? Just call it. Like, we're already like after lunch. We're only losing 4 hours at this point.
Yeah.
A truck exploded nearby. Sound's contaminated because we have 5 fire trucks, 3 police cars.
Reshoot that anyway at this point.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But who am I, right? Just a gaffer. So anyway, I remember the DP got on the phone with the PA that was supposed to buy the 3,000 watt putt-putt that was going to light our dinner room scene. And because of the explosion, they had set up a no drive zone, like where he couldn't get to set. And the producer gets on the phone with him, like, how heavy is it? If you abandon the car, could you carry the 3,000 watt generator to the set?
Well, what did he say?
He said no. It was like a mile away. It was like half a mile away. It's like it's not one that we see on box dolly with Fernie dolly with wheels. It was just right out of the store, like a 3,000, like a one dude with a 3,000. What's he gonna do? Strap it to his back with like?
No way.
No way.
So at that point they called it, but it was only an hour before our day was supposed to end anyway, and we got absolutely 0 shots in the film that day, even though they bent over backwards and pivoted to get everything that they could.
Yeah, so it was all a waste anyway.
It was all a waste anyway, and people almost got hurt several times.
Yeah.
And the wardrobe, we actually had to take a down day because they had to clean the shit water off the existing wardrobe. So